Yeah, yeah. Y'all know that? Come on in. Good morning. Right on. Y'all can keep playing. Just a little quieter. I'm Pastor Mercedes. This is Valley and Mountain. If you're in the building, thank you for joining us. If you're online, thank you for joining us. We are a community of co-collaborators who help out in this area in Seattle, but we want to reach you out in the interwebs, internationally. There should be a Valley and Mountain in every home. Just a few things about the space I want to mention. Who's on here? Hi, Juliana. So if you notice, we may not have masks on. That's because we took a COVID test and we tested negative. If you're in the congregation, in the room, we'd like you to have a mask on unless you take that COVID test if you're on staff. That way we can keep this space safe for those who might have immunocompromisation or anything like that. I wanted to mention to you that on either side of the stage and in the back of the room, there are exits, emergency exits, and there are ADA accessibility opportunities, so there are ramps on each side as well. Let's see what else. The bathrooms, there's a couple up here, and then there's some downstairs. They are gender neutral, so do what you gotta do. We want you to participate. We want you to clap your hands. We want you to wave your hands. We want you to talk back to us, even if you're online. Talk back to us in the chat. We want you to feel welcome. We want you to express yourselves. However that looks, we welcome it. We love you, we embrace you, and we love you without condition. We're getting ready to get started, so start your engines. You ready, Beth?
Good morning, beloved community in this space. We're a small group today, but it is so good to be with each of you. And for those of you who are joining us online, virtually, we want to give you an especially warm welcome as you join us for our time together. I was reflecting on coming to Valley and Mountain this week a lot, having a lot of conversations with others in our community, folks who are finding their way, and the question came up of being fed. And I was a little bit triggered by that word, honestly, originally, because I thought, well, it's such a Christianese term if you've grown up in the church. Like, are you getting fed? How's your walk? Maybe those are terms that are a little bit triggering for you. And I paused for a moment, and I said, yes, we're being nourished here. And just that reframe of feeling nourished and really thinking about it as a way to be spiritually nourished. Why do we come? Why do we gather each week? Why do we make the effort to come out when it's smoky, when there's road closures, when there's other things going on that we could be doing? Why do we make the effort to come, to turn on YouTube and to participate virtually? Why do we do that? It's nourishing for us, for me at least. It would be the equivalent of starving myself if I didn't do this each week. So yeah, I'm not just being fed though either. I'm being nourished. I'm being given nutrition to help me grow and be able to carry on in this journey, in this life, in this human experience that is not always kind or easy. And so I hope that wherever you are today, here in this space, joining us online, maybe somewhere in the future you're joining us virtually, I hope hope that you feel nourished today, whatever situation you find yourself in, whether you are in the valley low or the mountain high, you are welcome here. We love you so, so much. Wanderer, questioner, you are all beloved and you are all welcome here. I'm going to light a candle to open up this space and just want to give a blessing and a welcome to you all.
No matter where you are on life's journey, or where you're coming from, you can always call this place home. No matter where you've been or what you've done, no matter where you are on life's journey, or where you're coming, or where you're coming from, you can always call this place home. No matter where you've been or what you've done. Can we sing it one more time, Josh? Go ahead. No matter where you are on life's journey, or where you're coming from, you can always call this place home. No matter where you've been or what you've done. No matter where you've been or what you've done, you can always call this home. No matter where you've been or what you've done. No matter where you've been or what you've done. That might be easier.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Adrian. My pronouns are she and they. It's been a while since I've been here. It's nice to see you all. And I've actually been kind of spinning in my mind about what kind of grounding I wanted to offer. And listening to Beth, it just changed. So we'll see how this goes. One of my many spiritual streams that I'm part of is Buddhism. And in Buddhist tradition, there are 4 kinds of nutriments that we take in. And only one of them is food. So we're going to just check in with all of them. And for the food one, let's just check in with our bodies and feel our contact with the floor or the chair. And notice how our bodies are feeling in this moment. You can close your eyes if you like, or keep them open, whatever's more comfortable. Just notice if you have any places of tension, areas that are actually quite comfortable, areas that are neutral, and just be here with your body in this space or in your space at home. And notice your breath. Mine is struggling a little bit today with the smoke. And the second nutriment is sense impressions. So notice, if you want to open your eyes and just look around the space or look around your space at home. Notice what you're hearing right now. Notice if you can smell anything. Notice the texture of your clothes against your skin. The weight of your body on the chair. Okay, that was 3 senses, 4 senses. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we've done food, sense impressions, and now I'm losing it. We'll skip ahead to consciousness. Oh, volition. So volition is your intention. What is your intention for being here this morning? It's to receive some spiritual nourishment, some contact with friends, some quiet time, some joyous singing. What is your intention this morning? And the fourth one is consciousness, which is really our awareness. And we have different seeds in the Buddhist tradition. We are all born with seeds of different kinds of consciousness, which can be love, compassion, anger, hatred. And we water those seeds with our thoughts and our intention and our actions. So what seeds of consciousness would you like to nourish this morning? And then feel your contact again with the floor, with the chair. Notice how your hands feel from the inside out. And then open your eyes and look around. And smile at someone. Thank you.
You should really consider doing like ASMR or something. I just feel so comforted when I hear you talk. A mindfulness group, please let us know. Thank you so much. I'm hoping you feel grounded. Good morning if you just came in. My name is Pastor Mercedes, and my pronouns are she and her. Right after groundings, we do, each week we do gratitudes. And that is where we kind of just hold each other for a few moments. And whatever we're experiencing, whether it be a win, a loss, a lament, if you need prayer, a good intention sent your way, we just want to wrap our arms around you. I have a couple things to share, but I want to open the floor if anyone else wants to share first, because I always go first, and I want to prefer you. So if anyone else has a gratitude, I'll run the mic to you, and I'll check online as well. No pressure. You may even have an unspoken thing you just want to be acknowledged, so you can just slip up your hand and say, hey, and I'll just say, I see that hand. Some of the things that I love about our congregation and our community is, we come in all shapes and sizes and colors and all walks of life. And so all of those experiences, good morning, are different. But the thing that we do during our weekly or our periodic open mics, I don't remember what we call them, but we say, thank you for sharing your story. And so that's just a little part of it. Thank you for sharing your story. Does anybody have a story or something they want to share? All right. Oh, yes. Adrian says they're grateful to be here. Grieving the wildfires and the smoke, yes. Did you want to share anything? Still thinking good thoughts for those who are in Hawaii that also experienced that in the last few days and couple weeks. It's not always easy to see the silver lining in things. I just want to remind everyone that when there's a fire and something's broken down, then there's always, in some form or fashion, new life afterwards. And so I'm just sending new life to all of those places where fire has touched. What was that? Oh, okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
My father was recently diagnosed with COPD when he had RSV in the winter, so I'm feeling really sad for him, but really grateful that he's able to receive oxygen and still get all the health care he needs, even when he lives in a really rural area of Montana.
We're definitely praying for him and you.
I felt so grateful last week. I was having a lot of weird body problems, and just sitting in the back on the very comfortable beanbag, I just felt like held by this space, and so grateful to, it was just like a very restful moment for me, even as I was experiencing pain, to just be like, feel like I belonged here and was like resting here. That was very nice to like be in the valley and be experiencing what it means to be part of this community in that place.
That's awesome. Good on you for making it to the building, dear, so that we could embrace you. Anybody else? You got one, Chris? Or you just, okay.
Just thinking about the people in Maui. That's a horrible thing. I've stayed in Lahaina a few times, and beautiful community, and it's a really there's a benefit concert for them on Tuesday at Nectar. So if you want to come out and support, the thoughts with those folks. I'm grateful for the community of musicians and the joy and the gift of music, and how we're able to communicate, and just the embracing that comes with that community, and the love that is shared. So I am grateful for not only my music friends and my musician community, but also just community at large, and just the embracing of friends and family. So hold your loved ones close.
Amen to that. Checking one more time. Well, one of my gratitudes is for you, Josh. Ever since you came, even like the first week, you're just like, how can I help? What can I do? And your offering blesses all of us. And you have such a beautiful spirit and a beautiful voice. And I just want to acknowledge you for always getting to work and helping us. It helps this happen. So thank you so much for what you bring.
Thank you.
I don't know about y'all, but I had kind of a grueling week. Had a couple of tough moments and felt overwhelmed. And so I do want you to know that knowing that I was going to get back to this building with all of you helped me get through those moments. Like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but I know that my community holds me. So thank you for that. And also, this is the one I wanted to say, the liberation to be a practitioner instead of an expert. I'm new to being a pastor, and I don't have it all together, but I get an opportunity to practice what we believe and practice our core values, even though I don't know every single jot and tittle about this. And thank you for allowing me to grow and learn as I hold you. But I want to give that to you as well. Whatever you're doing and putting your hands to, my mouth needs to work. You don't have to be an expert. Just be a practitioner. Just hold those tenets in your heart. And your intention, that's kind of the synchronicity of the day, is intention. As long as your intention is focused, you will make progress and you will gain momentum. So no imposter syndrome, no perfectionism. And I think that that's appropriate for our deconstruction theme. We just have to practice what we believe. And we're not going to get it right every day. We're not going to be perfect every day. But give yourself grace. That's what I wanted to say. Amen and Ashe. I don't really have a prayer for that. That's what it was. So can we sing together? I am grateful for the things that you have done. Yes, I'm grateful for the victories we've won. I could go on and on and on about your word, because I'm grateful, grateful, so grateful just to praise you, Lord. And it's flowing from my heart, flowing from my heart, flowing from my heart, flowing from my heart to yours, flowing from my heart, flowing from my heart. Are the issues of my heart, are the issues of my heart. It's gratefulness. And while our children's leaders coming, I just want to say really quickly for those who are grieving, Paul, our hearts are with you. For those who are traveling, Summer and Rev Sekou, we pray that you have a safe return home, and we are thinking of you. Come back soon. Thank you. Woo. Come on, Joe. I don't know if that works, but I'll take it.
Good morning, Valiant Mountain. Hi, everybody. My name is Jo, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm filling in for Summer today, who is at summer camp. And I don't see any children in the audience today, but other than Emily. But everyone, all the children are so beloved and celebrated here, and I really value that about Valiant Mountain. So I'm going to read a poem today from God Got a Dog, and it's called God Woke Up. And he was groggy, so we got a nice cup of coffee and went to sit under an apple tree. He sat there drinking his coffee, listening to the birds, when all of a sudden, it hit him. He was happy. God was happy, and he wished there was someone there to see it. He had gotten such a bad rap all these years for being pissed off all the time. And he really wasn't. Maybe a little cranky. But here he was, happy, mellow yellow. The birds were singing, and he was at peace. Buddha told him it could be this way, but he never really believed it until now. Life was really easier sitting under a tree. Thank you.
I love it. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom.
to share our sacred text this morning, and I am going to ask us to stand. Rev Sekru likes to talk about that it's in his tradition that we stand for the reading of the holy text. We do that to show respect. I want to invite anyone who that's not in your tradition to just take this opportunity to stretch your legs and move your body a little bit while we listen to the reflection. And our text this morning is coming from the book of Mark in chapter 12, verses 28 through 34. And one of the scribes came up and heard them disputing with one another, and seeing that he answered them well, asked him, "Which commandment is the first of all?" Jesus answered, "The first is, 'Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." And the scribe said to him, "You are right, teacher. You have truly said that he is one, and there is no other but he. And to love him with all the heart, and with all the understanding, and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself is much more than all whole burnt offerings and sacrifices." And when Jesus saw that he answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And after that, no one dared to ask him any question. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You may be seated.
Thank you, Beth, for that beautiful reading of the text. So good to see all of your faces, Shaquille and some new folks that have come back. It's so good to see you again this Sunday, and Patrick and Katie back there, and I can hear Roscoe and Mara playing. It's so good to hear all of us just being in community with one another today. My name is Pastor DeAnza. My pronouns are she and her, and it's today has been, one of those days where we are just kind of pulling all the resources and tools and everything that we have to be here together. We're a little short-handed with Mixed Summer and Rev Seku being out of town. Mixed Summer is actually officiating her siblings' wedding today, so we are celebrating with them. And then also Rev Seku gets some just really sweet, precious time with his youngest son, and I think that's wonderful. And so we're celebrating with them as well. And I'm coming in just kind of tender today. This Thursday, I had the immense privilege and honor of sitting by the bedside of my mentor as she transitioned at 9:36 a.m. I don't think there is adequate words to describe the impact this woman has had in the world and in my life in particular. Barbara Lundquist, she was a professor and an ethnomusicologist at the University of Washington, and one of her gifts was that she would travel all over the world, and she would bring musicians together from all these different parts of the world to bring the best parts of their cultural traditions and music. And she did it so beautifully and so graciously, and with so much compassion. I met her when I was on staff in another church here in Seattle, and she was a board member there. And I preached this sermon, and she ran up to me, and she said, "You changed my life." And I have still to this day, I don't know what I preached. I don't know what part of the sermon resonated with her, but she always called me her pastor, and I always called her my mentor, and we maintained a relationship and met for coffee every single Friday for 10 years until the pandemic. And then I went through this tremendous life transformation, and I knew that it would come with a lot of scrutiny and a lot of judgment. And so I came to her knowing that she was one of those safe people in my life, and I shared that with her. And she said to me, DeAnza, my love for you is indestructible. And that's exactly how she lived her life. This week, I've been hearing from hundreds of people all over the world sharing the impact that she has had on their lives. And I am just so grateful that I have had such a tremendous honor to be called one of her own. And so I'm holding that this morning. And I invite you, with whatever you're holding, to be in this place and to hold yourselves also with grace and compassion and kindness. Before I get into my sermon today, I wanted to share a song. I think Danny is going to help me with it. I wrote this song in the midst of the pandemic in 2020. It just kind of came to me. And it really encapsulates, as we're in this new series of deconstructing faith and what that means. And the title of our series is Taking Things Apart and Finding Home. This, to me, really kind of encapsulates that journey for myself. So I just wanted to share it here, and I think it will give you a little context as to my own process. It's called Free. Thought the chapter book had closed. You turned a new page, got me wanting more. Thought I closed my heart on that door. Couldn't see myself or how I must flow. You are wonderful. You got me to see myself whole. Not limiting myself no more. 'Cause if the birds can sing, then so can I. Not limiting myself no more. Just like the sea will run to meet the sky. And I am free. I am free. We're the makers of our own stories. We get to choose what we want to tell. No one can steal our voice away. And though they may try, we fight like hell. You are wonderful. You got me to see myself whole. Not limiting myself no more. 'Cause if the birds can sing, then so can I. Not limiting myself no more. Just like the babies walk until they fly. And I am free. I am free. Thank you, Danny. So that song describes a little bit of my own process of deconstruction and really what I would call my healing process. And so as we're in this new series around deconstructing faith and what that means to kind of reclaim our own spirituality and what that looks like in our day-to-day lives. I was listening to what you were saying, Pastor Mercedes, a little earlier about being in the practice and figuring it out as we go. And I think one of the beauties and gifts of a community like Valley and Mountain is that we get to figure this out together, that we get to bring, as Rev Sekou would say, all the best of our traditions and bring it together and learn together and grow together and create this beloved community together. And so one of the things that I thought I would do just to kind of gauge where everybody's at and how this is all resonating with you in your own process is to ask a couple of questions. I want to invite you to either raise your hand if it feels like it resonates for you, or if you'd rather not, just kind of make note of it in your own body. And so I'll just ask these questions and kind of see where you're at with them. If you often feel like you have more questions than you have answers, then raise your hand. We're in good company then. If you value the idea that there is maybe more than one way of doing things, that in fact there are many ways of doing things and many ways of being in the world, then raise your hand. If you feel more comfortable with a process rather than a destination, then raise your hand with me if that resonates for you. And if you value the practice of exploring what you believe through the art of critique, as opposed to having to take things at face value, raise your hand. So it looks like when I look around, many of you raised your hands, and it's clear that a lot of these statements resonated with you. And so that indicates to me that you've probably been on your own journey of figuring out your spirituality and what you believe and what it even means to be in a community space like this for you. I've been doing this work of, this word deconstruction is a word that kind of came out of Christian evangelical circles as a kind of a response for a lot of folks in the evangelical church or in conservative church who are grappling with what they were raised with, how they were taught, what they were conditioned to believe, and coming to a place where they're not really sure if that really fits for what they believe anymore, what they value in the world. And so through my work as a therapist as well as a pastor, I've had lots of people come to me kind of grappling with that question and really wrestling with it and needing the support and the guidance and really the care to be able to make their way through that. Because at the heart of it, not only is it the question about what do I believe and why do I believe it, it also oftentimes has to do with relationships. How do I maintain relationships with my mom? Or how do I maintain relationships with a sibling? Or how do I maintain relationships with a community that I was born into and grew up in and have such dear friends in? How do I do that while also going on this very different journey over here? And so when I think of deconstruction, I often think of it as this opportunity to pause and to take note and to take a moment to really see what is there. What is it that we believe? What is it that we've been taught to believe? Why were we taught to believe that? Where does that come from? How do we understand that contextually? And what has the impact been? And then when we have been able to do that, we can also come to a better understanding of what our values are and what parts of our tradition feel still in alignment with our values, and what parts do we feel like we need to release and let go of. And in that process, there is a process of freedom in liberation that happens when we get the opportunity to assess where we're at and what we need to let go of and release and what we want to hold on to as part of our process. That is a liberating, freeing experience. And so for me, my journey, I would definitely use that language of deconstruction and of taking things apart and looking at things a little closer. But what I really came to realize as I was writing the sermon is that in that process, really what has been all about is the process of becoming human. The process of understanding myself in a real way and getting behind all of these filters that told me I had to be this way or had to be that way or had to show up this way or had to present that way. To really understand who I am and what matters to me. And that process has been a process of becoming human. It has been a process of taking things apart, reconstructing some things over here, and reclaiming traditions that I was conditioned as that they were wrong, that I was not supposed to participate in. And so sometimes I feel like one of those reality TV shows, those renovation shows, you know, like Fixer Upper or something. Except I'm not relating so much to the people as I'm relating to the project. And that I'm the renovation project. And that I've torn everything down to the very nuts and bolts, to the very foundation. I've removed all the frameworks, all the systems, all the structures, all the supports, and all I got left is the core part of me. And how messy and fraught and confusing and disorienting that process has been at times. How lonely it's been at times. And how essential it has been for me. And I'm grateful for that process because though sometimes I think when I'm talking to people about what I believe and who I am, and they're looking at me, it may not make a lot of sense to them. To me, it makes a lot of sense because I allowed myself to go through the process, as hard or challenging or lonely as it was at times. And there's freedom in that. There's liberation in that. So last week when Ashley was talking, she shared a little bit about her process, and she talked a lot about these rules that church communities and have within their church systems. And she talked a little bit about her own process with rules and what that meant for her and things, and it really resonated with me. My coming of age was in the 90s. I graduated in 1993. Don't hurt yourself and do the math on that one. Just move on. And the 90s was an interesting time in Christian culture. It was kind of a time when CCM, Christian Contemporary Music, became a really big deal. I was a huge DC Talk fan, Jesus freak, you know, all of that. But talk about a time where there was all these like shorthands and slogans and phrases for all these rules that made it really clear for us to know when we were going astray and how we need to get back on the path. I think it was in the 90s when we started wearing these plastic bands around our wrists that said WWJD. Beth knows them. And, you know, that stands for What Would Jesus Do? And we would wear them. We wear them to our CCM creation festivals and Jesus Northwest festivals. And we would wear those, and they were shorthand, right? For if we were doing something, or we were you know, tempted to do something that might not be in alignment, we could just ask ourselves that question: what would Jesus do? And then we quickly shuffle over. And I think now, if I knew the Jesus I know now, my answer would be really, really different. And this time in the 90s was also a time for the purity culture. And I'm really excited because my other mentor, Dr. Tina Sellers, will be here next week. And she wrote Sex, God, and the Conservative Church, How to Dismantle Sexual Shame. And she talks about purity culture. And during this time of the purity culture, there was all these, purity ceremonies and purity rings. There was books that came out. I Kissed Dating Goodbye. There was all kinds of programming around purity culture. In fact, my youth group pastor came up with kind of our own slogan for purity that was called Unbreakables, Unshakables. And we were encouraged to write down kind of our promises to God to keep ourselves pure before marriage. And then we would present those to our parents, to our youth group pastor. I mean, it's kind of creepy now that I think about it. And then we'd sign it, and then that was kind of like our contract that we were signing to God. And anytime we, had any confusion about what we were doing, we could always reference these unbreakables, unshakables. And these rules, they gave us this false sense of security. We felt like we were safe because we knew we were doing the right things. And part of this culture was, I think especially if you were a young girl or young woman in this culture, was kind of this idea that it was important for you to be a good girl, to maintain all these rules, all these purity rules, so that you could be a good girl. And I remember one time preaching about that and saying that it was better to be a good girl than to be alive. It was better to be a good girl and to follow the rules and to conform to the rules than to know myself and to know what I needed and what I desired and what my own pleasure was and how to connect. And so I wanted to be a good girl. I did. I wanted to follow all the rules and I wanted to do all the right things, because I wanted to be loved so desperately that I was willing to do whatever it took to ensure that kind of sense of security and that sense of safety. And something shifted for me. And this is kind of maybe one of the first waves of my process of becoming human. It was around the time I was 23 years old and my brother was 18. He had enlisted in the Army. And he had been away to boot camp for about 6 weeks. And he would call every once in a while, and it seemed kind of up and normal. And then about 7 weeks into his time of boot camp, all of a sudden we got notice that he was medically discharged and diagnosed with bipolar 1. And the military's response to a diagnosis like that is basically a one-way ticket home with a bottle of lithium and peace and good luck. There was no wraparound care services. There was no, hey, what is this person going to need when they get back to where they're going? What is their family going to need when they get back to where they're going? So my brother just was on a one-way ticket home. He got home, and he really struggled. He was unrecognizable to us. He struggled to stay on his meds. And so what would happen is that he would go off his meds, and then he would disappear, and then he'd get picked up by the police, and then he'd be taken to a psychiatric hospital. And that would just repeat itself over and over again. And this was a real time of crisis for us as a family. And so what we knew to do in times of crisis is to go to our church community, for prayer, for advice, for care, for support. And so we went to our church community, our pastors, our leaders, and so on. And as we were sharing what was going on for Sean, they looked at us and they said, we really think this has to do with some kind of sin that's going on. And perhaps, there's something that's not quite right in his relationship with God. And that's why this is occurring. This is why this is happening. And I was, at the time, an undergrad student at Central Washington University in the psychology and sociology departments. And I was studying the brain, and I was studying mental health conditions. And I knew this was absolutely not right. I knew that the brain was just as susceptible to disease and illness as any other organ of our body. And that my brother needed the support. He needed the treatment, and he needed community to be able to say that it was okay for him to go and get support and to get the treatment that he needed. And so I was angry. I argued with these pastors about this. And that was a turning point for me, because I realized I can't do this. I can't believe in a God who would punish someone for a condition that they have absolutely no control over. I can't believe in a God who wouldn't offer compassion and care and love to someone who's clearly suffering and confused and disorienting. I couldn't return to the church in the same way. And that experience impacted my brother so deeply. He refused to accept his condition. And it cemented in him this kind of seed of shame and of stigma around his condition that drove him to deny his need for help, his need for treatment. Part of my becoming human in these moments made me get really curious about my family and my legacy and the experiences of my family. And as we were going through this experience with my brother, I started to hear from other family members, oh yeah, we've seen this before. Your grandfather had these same symptoms, and we didn't know what to do. My grandfather migrated from the Philippines in the 1940s, and he worked mostly in plantations and factories on the islands of Hawaii. And so to have a condition like this would likely make him unqualified for that kind of work. And so he hid that. And my family didn't know what to do with that, and the church didn't know what to do with that, so we just hid it. And I realized, as I started kind of looking closer at my story and at my family's story, I started realizing the intergenerational trauma that just got passed down from one generation to the next. And that all this hiding and all this holding on to shame was actually a trauma response, a survival response. And so it made me rethink how it was that I could maintain a relationship with the church. And how it was that I could maintain this relationship with these rules that we were taught. And the more that I did that, the more that I realized that those rules were there not really as just safety nets, but they were there to control and to manipulate. And so, as folks of color, it was sometimes safer for us to follow the rules or assimilate to the rules to keep ourselves safe. I realized that the rules of becoming a good girl made my brown body more palatable for them. That the rules of being a good girl made my brown body more acceptable to them. That the rules of my being a good girl made me less threatening, and thus it was safer for them. And so I had to go through all of that. I had to figure all of that out because I had so much of that on me, so much of those filters on me, and it impacted me in such a deep, deep way. And so for a time, I left. I couldn't figure out how to do it. I couldn't figure out how to do the church thing. It didn't make sense to me. And at the same time, it was so much a part of my life. I grew up in the church. I was a part of worship, music. I was a part of children's ministry. We were at services almost every day of the week. It was a huge part of who I was and my identity. And I started to kind of just convince myself that I'm just going to have to let it go. It's probably not going to happen this side. And here I am, Valley and Mountain, 7 years. And I think what shifted that for me was coming to the realization that there's something deeply embedded inside of me that it really longs for connection and community. And the things that I want to do in the world requires community connection. And so the question then became not just about the possibility of leaving and staying away, but then it became the question of, what do I want to build? What am I trying to do here with my kids? What am I trying to build in my private practice when I do trauma therapy? Like, what do I want in this world? And the answer always came to me that I wanted places where people could be human too. And they could be their whole selves, and they can bring all the parts of themselves and the best of their traditions and the things that move them and stir them and their passions and their desires and their ideas, and we could put that all together and we could figure it out together. And that's what I wanted to build. And I know that I can't build that on my own, that I have to be in community with other people to build that. And so I found my way at Valley Mountain. Been here for 7 years. This text is such a timely text. Y'all know that we follow the lectionary series of Wilda Gaffney, and this just came up as the gospel text for today. Because it's so clear. I mean, I was telling Sekou this week, I was like, what are you preaching on? And I said, the greatest commandment. He's like, that preaches itself. I was like, yep, so I don't have to show up. Like, it just preaches itself. We can just read the text. We're done. Because it is such a clear and a straightforward text for us to read. But I want to look at it just a little bit deeper in terms of how we understand it in our current context, right? That how we understand this greatest commandment is that love is at the core of everything we do. It's central to everything that we do. And the one thing that we really see in this text and in this interaction is that it is actually core to the tradition. That loving is the core of the tradition. So as Jesus is responding to the teacher of the law, he is quoting a prayer, a lesson that they would recite and meditate on and pray all the way from when they're little wee ones, all the way up. And this prayer is found in Deuteronomy 6. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one God. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This was the core element of this tradition, was to be loving and to care for one another. And so they would meditate and they would pray, and Jesus reminded them to come back to their traditions in this way and to stay rooted in the tradition of love. And I think that a couple of things stand out to me when I think about this practice of love. Because Bell Hooks talks about it as a spiritual practice and as something that is deeply difficult for us to do. Because in order for us to be in the practice of love, we have to be in a place where we're willing to be honest with ourselves that we have a need for love. And sometimes when we're wounded or when we feel hurt or when we have trauma in our lives, we shut ourselves off from connecting to the reality that we desire love. We desire to be in loving relationships. We desire to be connected to one another. And so we shut those pieces off. And so the work of loving is a deep, deep work, and it takes all of our energy and all of our capacity, and it's a fully embodied practice for us. So love is central to all that we do. To love God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and all your strength, you have to be fully embodied. We have to be fully in touch with our own story, with our own experiences, with our own need for love and for connection. And sometimes when we get kind of focused on rules or traditions or the right ways of doing things, sometimes it takes us out of our bodies. We become disembodied. And the problem with that isn't so much that we sometimes lean into different traditions to help us to understand ourselves. The problem with that is when we use those traditions as a measure to see who's in and who is out. When we use it as a measure to say who is deserving of love and who is not deserving of God's love, when in fact we are all deserving of God's love. And to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, it is all encompassing. And so, in other words, it takes all of our effort, all of our tools, all of our resources, right? Because we have to have intention that is coupled with action. And oftentimes in community, the reality is that my understanding of what loving might look very differently from what your understanding of loving is. And so sometimes we have to listen more first so that we can learn. And when we've listened and we've learned, then we can show up in meaningful ways for one another. Sekou and I will always talk about this as our love languages at home. And he says, I don't like the way you fold towels, but I love you, so I'll fold them the way you like them. And there's a lot of peace in our home because of that. Love means showing up to the best of our ability for others. It's not about perfection or getting it right all the time. Love is about taking the risk to show up and possibly get it wrong, but then to learn and to go through that process so that we can know each other better. And then finally, Jesus says, he adds on a part to this Shema, this prayer here in this scripture. And the part that he adds to it is found in Leviticus, and it is love your neighbor as yourself. And it's a really pivotal part because how we love our neighbor is how we love God. You did for one of the least of these, you did for me. Did you feed the hungry? Did you create affordable housing? Did you vote to protect the rights of the most vulnerable in our communities? How we love our neighbor is how we love God. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. And so here is my closing question for you. How are you loving yourself these days? Bell Hooks said, you can't love others if you're not willing to love yourself. You can't receive love from others if you're not able to love yourself. So my question is, how are you loving yourself these days? How are you seeing yourself? How are you considering your own humanity? Are you being tender? Are you being gentle? Are you being kind? Because I think that when we're feeling triggered and activated and disembodied, it's easy for us to spiral around in shame and doubt and self-contempt, which drives us to want to be more perfect and to get it right even more. And all of this perfectionism, which I think is an extension of an internalized depression, is killing our souls. And it is killing the joy that we have in being in community with one another. And so my question to you today is, how are you loving yourself? How are you caring for yourself? Do you know that your body is good and holy and sacred? Do you know that the divine called your body good and holy and sacred? How you love yourself will determine how you love others. How you're able to hold the messy and glorious parts of your humanity will determine how you're able to hold the messy and glorious parts of another's. And my final thing is, love yourself by committing to not settle for anything less than dignity and respect. I love you all so much. I am so grateful to be in community and that we get to figure community out together.
Hello. Hi. Dr. DeAnza, I just want to tell you, wow. There's like fireworks going off in my head. I don't know about you. But in my tradition, when something resonates, I got to talk back to you. I know I was making a lot of noise during your reflection, but wowzers. I know what my work is. When you were giving the sacred text, Beth, I hate the Message version, and I couldn't find the version you were doing, but I was already challenged when it said, love God with all your passion, your prayer, your intelligence, your energy. I've never heard it that way. And then to cap it off, it says, love others as well as you love yourself. But how can I do that if I don't first love myself? Your words were just so life-giving. They were spot on. And even though we may be few in numbers, I believe whoever was in this room or online, that was for you. Can I get an amen? That was for us. And it was such nourishment to hear that. And I just want to affirm you. Thank you for sharing about your mentor. And so many memories unlocked with what you shared today. So thank you, Dr. Spalding. Well, Dr. Sekou. Hello. Can we sing and welcome our kiddos back? Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Deep down in my heart, deep down in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Deep down in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Deep down in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. One more. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere
Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine.
Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
As we say each week, Valley and Mountain is a community of co-creators, not a group of spectators or consumers. We pool our resources, and together we do so much more than we could do apart. At this time, we're going to pause, and you can make an offering or a pledge. If you'd like to make a gift to the offering basket, you can bring it when you come down for communion. You can also give online. There's a link in the digital bulletin to give to the online basket, offering basket, or you can text to give. And there's also details for that in the paper bulletin. If you didn't get one of those, they are located in the back. If this has begun to feel like a spiritual home for you, and you'd like to become a pledging member or household, you can make an ongoing weekly or monthly gift, and there's also a link for that in your paper or digital bulletin. If you'd like to redistribute resources through our Community Mutual Aid Fund, you can offer or request resources, and the info for that is also in the bulletin. But please know, if this is your first time here, that your presence alone is such a gift to us. We give to each other and we co-create in this space in so many ways. It's not just about money, although that's really important and it does do a lot of good here. It is about our time and our talents that we share with one another to make this space what it is. So I'm going to invite you all to ponder that as we say our offering prayer together. Again, if you want to bring your offerings up when you come up for communion, we'll go ahead and do that. Thank you all for all the ways that you help us co-create in this community. I'm personally grateful for each one of you and for the work that you're doing here in this community and also out in the world in your own communities. So please join me in the offering prayer, which you'll find also in the bulletin. Wellspring of life, help us to use our offerings to make peace in our community. Set us free from fear, hoarding, and hostility, and renew in us the desire to become open-handed and open-hearted. Teach us to know what is enough, so that all may not just survive, but thrive.
Our celebration. It's part of our tradition to gather around this communion table. And we practice an open table, so all are welcome at this table. It is a table that is reminding us that we are loved without condition. And so we invite you each here to this table when you're ready. In a few moments, we'll have lines on either side of the stage. We offer gluten-free crackers and grape juice. We invite you to come forward when you're ready and take part in the elements. When you come forward, if you would rather not take part in the elements, but you love prayer or blessing, please let us know. We're here to pray with you today. And then for those of you that are at your seat and you'd like someone to come to you and serve you at your seat, you can just raise your hand and one of us will come by. But before we take communion, we have a story to tell.
Long ago, Jesus arrived outside Jerusalem. The occupied people of the land went outside to greet him, and together they defied the emperor through the art of revolutionary street theater.
Jesus went to the temple and turned the tables and welcomed in people who were sick and disabled who had been excluded. They entered the temple. Their stories were centered, and it was a holy place.
The night before Jesus was executed as an enemy of the state, Jesus gathered his friends to sing and pray and share a meal that would build their courage for the journey ahead. He broke bread, he poured the cup, and he said, "Do this in remembrance of me."
As we do each week, let's outstretch our hands and pray this blessing upon this communion feast. Gracious God, pour out your Holy Spirit into us and these gifts, that through this cup and bread we may know we are beloved without condition. Transform us, make us one body with you and with one another. Amen.
If you'd stand, come on in where the table is spread. The feast of the Lord is going on. All are welcome. Come on home to me, and I will hold you in my arms, and joy for me there will always be a place for you at my table. Return to me. Always be a place for you at my table. Return to me. There will always be a place for you at my table. Return to me. There will always be a place for you at my table. Return to me. Can we give a hand for Dr. Spalding one more time? What a beautiful reflection. Thank you.
Thank you all. And thank you all for being here today. Chad Henry came through and wanted me to let everyone know that there are donuts. So please stick around, have some donuts with us. And we just need some help cleaning up and putting things back after the service. So if we could get a couple hands up, 4 to 5 to help us. 2, 3, 4. Great, 5. Thank you so much. And you can meet us in the back and we can get you all sorted. This is a time for announcements, but I don't know. Do you have an announcement?
It's the fall. There's a couple of things happening that you'll note. We have a homecoming service coming up in September, and that's when we kind of just say, hey, we're still here. We start our donation drive during that time, and many times we do things for families, such as the blessing of the backpacks to launch kids to go back to school, things like that. So we want to encourage people to come back to the building and just kind of circle the wagons and get centered and calibrated for the fall season. And then also want to remind you that we do have an annual Christmas concert, holiday concert. It's open to all who want to participate. We're going to be singing some songs, telling some stories, and the only thing you have to be is breathing. You can come and give your joyful noise, and so that will be coming up. But that's all I have.
Wonderful. Next week, we'll have Dr. Tina Sellers will be here. She's a sex therapist, an author, a scholar, and she's going to come and just bless us all with all kinds of wisdom. And then we've been talking about this conference that's coming up called Evolving Faith. And a lot of folks like Dr. Wilda Gaffney and Sarah Bessie and other folks that have done this work around deconstructionism are having this conference in Minneapolis in October. And so we're thinking about possibly sending a few folks there and also doing part of their hybrid online conference here in Seattle and gathering together as a group. So we'll give you more information as that is coming up as well. And then also, if you're interested in getting involved in a small group, you like getting together with other folks and getting to know each other a little bit more deeply and regularly seeing each other, we are getting ready to launch our beloved community groups. And so if you're interested in getting involved in that, I would love to get you connected in a way with the beloved community. I think that's all. Okay. And so I have a benediction. We can all stand together with this benediction. It's a really easy benediction. I'm going to sing it, and then I'm going to have us all sing it together in unison. It's let love bless you and keep you. Let love shine her face upon you. Let love bless you and keep you. Let love shine her face upon you and give you peace, and give you peace forever. Let's sing it together. Let love bless you and keep you. Let love shine her face upon you and give you peace, and give you peace forever. And all of God's people said, amen.
Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. How about this one? Oh, this joy that I have, oh, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. You know the world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it and the world can't take it away.